the Punch and Judy kind of music press when you used to have the Melody Maker and the Enemy. I think it's a real shame that we don't have it anymore, because I do think that it was responsible. It generated lots of scenes, and it generated lots of in lots of ways it generated lots of great music. It generated lots of laughable cultural jokes as well, but it sort of, it was part of the genesis of things like punk, which went on to change how people saw music. So I think I think we're missing something now. We don't have that.
But yeah, in the book you write very sort of evocatively about going, sort of going out to get the music press on the day that Suede's first really great positive review.
Yeah.
And so you have these moments, because everything is kind of dribbling out all the time now, kind of in an online age. That's something that's kind of slightly lost. So you have these kind of moments where, okay, there is measurable progress. And
absolutely. Well, we used to, I used to get the tube to used to get the Enemy and the Melody Maker from Tottenham Court Road. There used to be a little kiosk by the tube station, and that was the first place in London that had it. And you used to be able to get it on like a Tuesday afternoon or Tuesday morning. And I used to always go down there and buy it. And you just read every single word in it twice, And I think a band like Suede, we were sort of, when we got successful, people sort of like saw us as a product of the music press. And I think in lots of ways we weren't, but not in the way that they might mean it in a pejorative way. I mean it because we grew up reading the Enemy and the Melody Maker and sounds cover to cover, learning every single word, and part of that kind of culture of kind of like devouring the music press.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, so did I. We've got one final question from, and then we'll sort of throw it over to the floor if that's okay. I don't know if you've ever met this gentleman, but it's Gary Kemp from Spandau Ballet.
Gary, actually, yeah.
You friends?
Well, let's wait and see. Until after this, shall we?
I think I know what the answer to this might be, but he asks, did Britpop appear like some laddish roadblock to scupper the aesthetic aspirations of Suede? He adds, it did to me.
Oh, I'll take that as a compliment. I think we are friends, aren't we? I don't know. Possibly. I mean, we were just sort of doing something that it felt like kind of like what we were doing kind of got hijacked and turned into something else. Yeah. So it did sort of become something rather ugly for me. But I'm not going to moan about it.
You drew your line in the sand and sort of. It almost helped to define you in the long term, didn't it, in a way?
I suppose so. Yeah. It sort of became a big thing, and we. The band possibly became a kind of appendage of it in a funny sort of way, a strange sort of appendage of it, and I don't know. I don't know what I think about it really. It's I've kind of thrown lots of quotes there about it, kind of quite sort of pejorative quotes about Britpop, but I think it did have some strengths. I think its rejection of American cultural imperialism was a really important thing. I think that was a brilliant thing. I hate going around, travelling around the world and seeing kids with backwards baseball caps sort of dressing like they kind of live in the Bronx. Do you know what I mean? It's like at least Britpop kind of like it was sort of celebrating its own culture, and that was worthwhile. The difference is, and I've said it before, I was documenting that culture, and the bands that came later were celebrating. I think that's the distinction to make.
Thank you, Brett.
Thank you, Pete.
Pleasure, always a pleasure. Does anyone have any questions they would like to ask Brett? I think that was the first time.
Hello.
Hello.
So, in the 10 years or so between first big long period of Suede and the being away for 10 years or so from Suede, not from other things obviously, and coming back, it seems like a lot changed, growing up, and a lot of things changed then. I only wondered because the last book I read, the only book, as far as I know, that's been really, really good about Suede, was David Barnett's one. And I wondered at all if among the many things that would have changed, between A New Morning and Bloodsport, if reading someone else's very accurate opinions on, or like, if reading that had any influence at all on post-split Suede.
Reading David's book?
Yeah, like a little bit.
Well, I don't mean to be sort of disparaging, but I just didn't want to write a rock biography. I said it in the thing. So no, but I don't mean that in a kind of mean way at all. David did a great job with what he did. He set out to write a conventional rock biography, and I kind of didn't want to do that. So that's the answer to that one. Rachel Apps.
Hello, Brett.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good. Have you got any more names for me to pick up?
I have not any raffles for you tonight.
No,
but,
I'm disappointed.
I'm sorry, but I'll make one for you
Can I just
tomorrow.
say with that, I thought that the people that would win that competition would be the people that got all the questions right.
Then it would seem like... But Brett, do you really want David Barnett to win a prize?
No. He should have been disqualified.
He should have been disqualified. But I was thinking
anyway.
of giving the top 3 people a separate prize anyway.
Okay.
I do have some of my old fanzines kicking around.
Cool, yeah.
So maybe some of those, but
Quietly Kill for You.
that's right.
Yes,
Do you remember?
it was a very good fanzine.
Thank you.
We should have. It would be nice to have fanzines again, wouldn't it?
It would be lovely.
Well,
I love fanzines.
Miss Jennifer here
Okay.
has done one in the recent times, so and
That's
hers is
nice.
very good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fanzines are great.
Yeah.
There used to be.
brilliant.
I remember back in the 90s, there used to be a fanzine about Suede fanzines.
Donna's
It's called
Directory.
Donna's Directory.
Yeah.
It was sort of collating all because there were so many Suede
yes.
fanzines.
Well,
you
we
needed the
made
sort
it
of
in
Bible
there.
of the
We
Suede
had a
fanzines. The ultimate
Yeah.
kind of.
Yeah, it was like a status thing. If your fanzine made it into Donna's Directory,
Yeah,
you
I was
were
quite proud
a
of that
competent
actually.
fanzine.
Yeah. Donna's Directory. Yeah.
Anyway, I digress.
Anyway, what's your question?
I've read your book a couple of times now, and
Sorry about that.
no, I love it. It is brilliant, and it just made me think. It just popped into my head this morning. You write a lot about sort of ordinary days in your childhood, but I just wondered, were there any sort of family traditions you followed? Maybe any sort of Christmas traditions?
Yeah,
or
we
what
used
was
to, me and my
Christmas
dad
time
used to have a
like?
Christmas tradition of arguing about pop music and classical.
thought that was every
every
day.
Christmas afternoon at about 6
Was
o'clock.
it?
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Once the sort of sherry had worn off, he'd sort of start saying he'd say some sort of outrageous comment about how the Sex Pistols, of course, they couldn't measure up to the glory of Hector Berlioz, could they? And right, okay.
But when you were
So-
small, did you do the whole Father Christmas thing? Was that ever a thing at your house?
Did I dress as Father Christmas?
Did Peter dress his Father Christmas? Did he come down the chimney?
I'm sure, yeah, probably. I can't. Yeah,
You can't really
probably,
remember.
Yeah, it was weird. It's a conventional household in that way.
Yeah.
It wasn't. He wasn't dressed as Lawrence of Arabia.
A wreath around his head.
Yeah, just with a beard.
Yeah.
What was your best ever Christmas present?
Oh, Action Man probably.
Yeah.
It was the-
Eagle Eyes?
Couldn't afford Eagle Eyes. for God's sake. Obviously, I was from a posh family. I couldn't even afford gripping hands. Mine had those hands that were shaped like that. they held
Lego
a kind of
hands.
plastic gun, and that
It's
was
like
it.
Lego men.
Yeah.
Lobster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Misery never ends.
I know. It is like the Four Yorkshiremen sketch, isn't it?
Yeah, you were so poor. They didn't even have real
I
hands.
know.
Oh,
It's
dear.
terrible.
Anyway, there's a
Thank you,
gentleman
Brett.
at the back there. You mustn't forget the people at the back.
Thank you.
Hello.
You mentioned not wanting to follow the herd, and Suede have got a reputation for amazing B-sides and album tracks. Are there any songs, those like hidden gems, that with the benefit of hindsight, you think maybe you should have pushed out to a wider audience as a single? just to get some of those heard by more people?
Yeah, I kind of, there's lots of sort of things. It's a strange thing that Suede have had, because we've always been able to write the single. The single has always been the thing that has been released and people hear. And I've always thought there's a kind of alternate kind of like history of Suede. If we'd have sort of released things like Sleeping Pills instead of Animal Nitrate and stuff like that, we would have been seen as a very different sort of band now. But virtually all of those early B-sides I think should have been on albums. I deeply regret that. I think virtually all of them from those first few singles, the albums would have been stronger. Yeah.
One more from the back and then we'll go forward again. That gentleman just, oh well.
Hi Brett.
Hello.
Is it more nerve-wracking releasing a book than an album? Because up until the other day, like, I've followed Suede since '93 and I didn't know, like, Next Life was about your mum. But when you're putting a book out there, it's like you're sharing all your intimate thoughts, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it is very revealing writing a book, and I think I would have been devastated if it hadn't been received very well, because that would almost be quite kind of insulting to sort of the memories that I'd been quite free with. But luckily it's been received well, so it sort of I feel quite comfortable with it. If it hadn't have been, I probably would have felt very differently about it. But also, it's kind of, I suppose because I'm kind of like, it isn't my main thing. I've kind of been quite relaxed about it, really. It doesn't feel to me like I'm kind of worrying about it, which is kind of quite nice, really. I can't worry about everything. I never get any sleep. So the whole process of writing the book and releasing it has actually been strangely quite pleasant.
Is it partly when you write a book, there's a sort of layer of people who hopefully will make sure that that it kind of gets up to a certain kind of quality standard before it kind of comes out. So that kind of helps take the pressure off you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think you go through a very sort of filtered process. Not that the book is, but it's like any kind of editorial process. Yeah, it's and I was kind of very careful to listen to advice from my publishers, because this was my first book, and I was very aware that I'm not going to sort of stand there and sort of assume that every word I write is going to be amazing, kind of thing.
Is it your last book?
Is it the last book? I don't think so. I think I'd like to write something else. Yeah, I've really enjoyed writing it, and it feels like a sort of quite a nice thing for me to do at the age I am at. If that doesn't sort of sound, it just sort of feels right. And it's
you've got that there's a distance of hindsight which allows you to. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. That was a really key thing. I couldn't have written it any sort of earlier in my life. I don't think it felt like the right time to be able to write about it.
Okay. Do you want to? So many. I'm going to choose you in the middle there, and then I'm going to come forward a bit.
Hi.
Hello.
This might seem a bit of a strange question to ask, but how would you describe your experiences about this in one word? And while I still have a microphone, can I just say thank you for your music has saved my life multiple times already, so thank you.
Oh. So if anyone doesn't know, that's the School of Architecture that I studied at. Forgettable. I don't mean to be mean, but I don't really remember much. But I was studying architecture and I wasn't really paying much attention. I was just sort of staring at Justine while she was drawing. Terrible, isn't it?
Once the sirens of the taxis around.
Hello.
Sure, hello. Brett, could you have written this book if your parents were still alive? And if so, what, if anything, would you have written differently?
No, I couldn't have written it if they were still alive. I don't think. No, I couldn't have. I wouldn't have been able to. I don't know. My sister is still alive, and she is a sort of like not a fully drawn figure in the book. I didn't want to kind of characterise her like I sort of have a little bit with my parents, but nothing's. I'm not sort of lying about, but choosing to write, like I said earlier, with the description of the room, you can choose a tone, and I chose a tone to portray my father with. I chose a tone to portray my mother with, and I sort of didn't want to do. I wouldn't have been able to do that. That's sort of like you're absolutely right.
Choose you in the middle, that lady with that name on, but we'll try and get through it.
Hi, Brett.
Hello.
You mentioned just now that you think you might write another book. I wondered if that would be another memoir, or would you write a fiction book, perhaps?
Who knows? I don't know.